Thank you. Yeah. Okay, that brings us to the last session before lunch, and this is very special and different because we've been talking about technology, we're talking about challenges, we're talking about ideas that we have. Now, if these ideas have to be implemented, what are the next challenges and how do we solve it? So we have this panel discussion called as Funding Challenges in Electronics and Semiconductors. And then we have three of the best speakers that you could ever hear from and understand what it takes or what are the challenges and how do we solve it. So while I request each one of the speaker to switch on their video, unmute their audio, I would want to introduce all three of them one by one, starting with Anil Agrawal. Mr. Anil is Joint Secretary, Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. Under his leadership, several changing policies have been implemented, and he conceptualized and commissioned UP 100, UP Police Emergency Systems. He also implemented transparent recruitment process of police officials. He has pioneered transparent and objective promotions process for the subordinate officers. He has led initiatives which drives the conservation of precious wildlife, forest health, declaration of Naxal affected villages as Ambedkar villages for the economic development and in many other. He also contributed to the maturity of electronic surveillance process and many such processes which are now part of the curriculum of the training of IPS officers. Mr. Anil, welcome.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sateesh Andra. Sateesh has worked in or with venture-backed technology startups in US, India for past 20 plus years. Currently, he is managing director at Endiya Partners, a venture capital fund that offers startup capital to product startups across technology, healthcare, and consumer services. He serves on the boards of Alpha ICs, KIST, Darwin Box, and Seclor. As a managing partner, he served on the boards of Little Eye Labs, Facebook, Seclor, and One Breath. He is involved with the Pulela Gopichand Badminton Academy with the objective of popularizing sports. He's a charter member of the Indus Entrepreneurs, what we call as TAI, and he has also co-founded the health awareness promotion project in India called HAPPY, which creates awareness about non-communicable diseases. He was a top-ranked table tennis player representing AP State in nationals and is an ardent practitioner of meditation. Sateesh, welcome. And then we have the third speaker, Tarun Verma. Tarun is managing partner of In Silicon Catalyst. In Silicon Catalyst, he has over 25 years of experience in the semiconductor industry with varied leadership and technology management roles in operations and engineering. Tarun joined Silicon Catalyst in 2015 as the first non-founder employee. And prior to that, he has spent 22 years with Ultra, which is now Intel PSG, where he led the packaging efforts for the organization. Tarun has bachelor's in technology from IIT Kanpur and MS in material science from the University of California at Berkeley. Welcome, Tarun.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
With that, I will let the stage be open to these three experts. And Anil, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just one correction in my service that you've indicated. I belong to the Indian Police Service and not the IAS. So that's just a matter of fact. And I'm extremely honored and privileged to be part of this esteemed event. It is an honor for me to be hosting this discussion for the next about an hour. The way I wish to do this is, after the formal introduction that has already taken place, I would request all the speakers to introduce what they are currently doing, so that we have a fuller understanding of their work. I am the Joint Secretary in charge of the Startup India program in the Government of India, and I look after the Startup India program. We've taken some initiatives, and we are also working on some newer initiatives. I would request Tarun to please introduce himself.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you all. I'm very excited to be participating in this session. Just to kind of complete the story, I was in Bangalore on March 3rd when to present live a few months ago when the pandemic hit and the event was cancelled. I want to thank the ISA leadership. I want to thank Dissolve Semiconductor, our latest in-kind partner who has enabled this opportunity. And as already mentioned in the introduction, I grew up in India, went to IIT Kanpur. I went to Berkeley after that, and I've been in the Valley ever since. I was in Altera, which is the first one of the most early successful fabless semiconductor companies. I went through the boom of the 80s and 90s for the semiconductor industry. And in about 2012, I moved on and left Altera after a good career. And I joined Silicon Catalyst in 2015. I would just spend a minute talking about Silicon Catalyst. Silicon Catalyst was founded by the idea of why is innovating in hardware so hard? By 2010, the software world had taken over post the global financial crisis. Yet, as the founders and as being kind of the part of the founding team, we saw that semiconductor innovation was still fundamental to driving new markets. And we really believed that there had to be a better way of doing so. That was the genesis of Silicon Catalyst. And we have started operations in 2015. We are the only incubator in the world. We incubate companies, startups worldwide. And we are the only incubator that is focused exclusively on accelerating solutions in silicon. There are thousands of incubators all over the world, but we are exclusively focused on accelerating solutions in silicon. We started our business. We have looked at 350 plus applications. We have admitted 31 companies to date. So we have less than 10% acceptance rate. And in my role there, as a small startup ourselves, we are engaged from sourcing to hosting the companies for 24 months and providing a lot of guidance from the technology side, from the business side, from the funding side, from the go-to-market. In a sense, we take early stage startups and take them to the next series when professional investors like Sateesh take them over. So that's what I do. Over to you, Sateesh.
Thank you, Tarun. It's a great event. Congratulations to Satya and the entire IESA team for putting it together. Very, very timely, obviously, for various reasons. My own background, I spent roughly 16 plus years in Silicon Valley. The first 8 years working for large semiconductor companies, VLSI technology. They had functional system blocks, FSBs, primarily IP components that system on a chip vendors could take, which would allow them to get time to market kind of an advantage, designing PowerPC chipsets for Apple. Later moved across the street to go work for LSI Logic, designing communication chipsets, targeting Cisco's and Junipers and many other startups. Then moved to a startup called T-Square, one of the first network processor companies in the world. We were acquired by Connexent. Then I kind of bid goodbye to the entire semiconductor industry, did a U-turn, moved to enterprise software, started a company in the Valley called Euclid, raised around $35 million of venture capital funding. It was a SaaS company. Then after exiting Euclid, moved to the venture capital world, was with DFJ, 2 funds, and then started Endiya Partners. Came back to India in 2009-10 timeframe. So last 10 years I've been in India, spending significant amount of time on the ground. Endiya journey is 5-year-old. We're $100 million under management. What we do is what Tarun talked about. We obviously felt that IT services and BPO services kind of a 1.0 in India's context of entrepreneurship and venture capital. And then we've seen a significant number of internet and mobility companies becoming very successful. And we strongly felt that there's going to be product innovation because of returning Indians, local talent, and young graduates, obviously, who are very fearless and talented. We felt that there are going to be many, many more product startups that are going to take birth. That's how Endiya was born. In terms of India's journey, we've invested in companies like Alpha ICs. Alpha ICs is an edge AI processor. Semiconductors, which is an imaging radar chip, cell propulsion in electric mobility, many other companies in the pipeline. I'm glad to be part of this panel. Happy to share my thoughts. Again, thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, so now this is a very unique panel where we have the government, we have an incubator which is specifically working on semiconductors and electronics, and we have somebody who's actually funding the electronics and semiconductor industry. Now, the question that we have is that we should try to answer today is like when we have so many startups coming up out of this country, almost in entire field, IT, pharma, agriculture, medical, health, everywhere we have so many companies. Why is it that we don't see big electronics and semiconductor companies coming out of it? So this is what we should try and answer in this next this slot that we have. I would request everyone to converge so that at the end of this session, how the industry and government could collaborate, and we could identify some actionables for us. Industry could do certain things, government could do certain things, and then how we could collaborate to create a component ecosystem where we could have chips and electronics being designed and being manufactured in the country. So this is what. So now what I would do is I would start my introduction about Startup India. I like to share some slides, and then we can go so that we have a structured discussion. Yeah. Now, Startup India is an initiative that we launched in January 2016. It's about 4 years now, and if you look at the overall ecosystem of the country's economy, we are the fastest growing So we now have the fastest growing economy. Ease of doing business, we have improved a lot. And over these last 4 years, we have built up world's third largest ecosystem. There are the number of unicorns. Of course, there is differing numbers. Somebody says we have 40, but we have 21, even with the reduced valuations because of COVID. Startup India has taken a number of initiatives. We have across the board 360-degree action points to support startups. And when we conduct now venture capital summits, investors from 15 countries attend our global VCs. We usually have it on first weekend of December every year. And again, we expect a lot of interest that ignites globally about the startup ecosystem in the country. We are also the most startup friendly country in Asia. And if you look at 19, we had about $9 billion worth of capital deployed in 750 investments in India. And the average exit value was $39 million with 132 exits. Apart from this, if you look at total funds that were deployed, including the private equity, it was 48 billion during 2019. And in this 2020, 3.5 months, that is, starting April, we've already seen commitments of 20 billion coming into the Indian economy, in the Indian startup ecosystem, in the Indian innovation and entrepreneurship system. Google, Facebook, Foxconn, we are looking. These are very exciting times for the startup ecosystem. Now, this was the program that our Honorable Prime Minister launched in January 2016. We have more than 35,000 government-recognized startups. And the most distinguished feature about this is that these startups are coming from 581 districts out of 725 districts that we have in the country. So now this program has stirred entrepreneurial spirits across the country. 29 governments of states and UTs now have active policies to support startups in all their states. Karnataka is not the only one. We have 29 state governments of states and UTs which have active policies supporting startups. We have a huge Startup India hub which is available in 40 international languages. And of course, there are a number of programs which are offered on this hub. I request everyone to have a look at it. We also have a program for supporting intellectual property registrations. So there are fast-track examinations available for startups which are recognized by the Government of India. Normally, it used to take about 5 to 6 years for grant of an IP. We have granted IPs in less than 100 days to startups. Now, that is the kind of things that have been done at the Government of India. Now, we are in the process of building up a seed fund scheme, which we are planning to execute through various incubators. That is to support concept, POC stage, and early stage funding. We are also looking at, implementing a credit guarantee scheme so that when banks and some of the AIFs also will be covered in that scheme. So if you are taking debt from AIFs, those debts will be guaranteed by the Government of India so that more and more domestic capital is mobilized for giving funding to startups. We are building up a Startup India showcase where, we are going to showcase on a permanent basis, virtually as well as physically, both selected startups across all sectors of the economy. Another thing that we are now planning to do is, create a seamless matchmaking platform for all the startups who are looking for funding at different stages, right from seed stage to Series A, Series B, Series C, and all the investors on the other side, and do a matchmaking. You look at a particular sector and then you look at a particular kind of investments, then they should be able to do it on our platforms. Apart from this, there are two important initiatives that are required for this. We are not Atmanirbhar in developing our own language content. If you look at the presence of Indian languages on the internet, on technologies based on internet, there are lots of deficiencies. We are looking at how we could improve that ecosystem, because ultimately, now the bottom of the pyramid speaks our own language. 90% of our population speaks our own language. They don't understand English. And finally, we need to have Atmanirbharta in our own maps. We have Navik chip designed indigenously. We have our own regional navigation system. Why are we still dependent on mapping services provided by multinational companies? Can we do something about Atmanirbharta in mapping services? We have a 10,000 crore startup fund of funds. We have already committed about 4,000 crores to 350 companies. 56 alternate investment funds have benefited out of it. There is a research grant, the startup seed support system by the Science and Technology Entrepreneurship Development Board. And we also have the electronics policy and the national telecom policy. So if you look at electronics policy 2019, 45,000 crore fund. It's actually there to push manufacturing in electronics. And this is something very, very relevant for today's conference. It has the provision for credit guarantee of loans up to 100 crores and interest subsidy on loans up to 1,000 crores. These are major initiatives that Government of India has taken. And this is one of the most important slides that would interest a lot of people here. And this is a production linked incentive scheme. So, like if you invest in electronics, component manufacturing, semiconductors, mobile phones. So the more you invest and the more your sales turnover and the more you produce, government is going to offset the disabilities in terms of costs that are there. So it gives you 4%, 5%, 6% incentive related to your turnover. Now, these are the Government of India initiatives. Very briefly, whole lot of state governments have, laid out a number of initiatives for startups. Many of them are sector agnostic, not specific to electronics and semiconductors. And then, this is a summary, but we can have a look at this. So this is broadly what the Government of India is doing in terms of various initiatives that are being taken. Now, I would request now Sateesh for his opening remarks and request him to share some slides if he has.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Agrawal. No, I don't have any slides, but I'll recap my thoughts. First of all, definitely, I think a lot has been done by Startup India. All the venture capitalists in the country, I think entrepreneurs in the country, for last several years, beneficiaries. I think we're very proud to say that we're the third largest ecosystem now in the world, and hopefully second or even the largest, in the years to come. I think with respect to semiconductors, which is the theme, right? I mean, why isn't funding not happening in the semiconductor vertical? If you really look at, I think semiconductor industry doesn't get its due recognition, world over. I believe that unless you have innovations in the semiconductor industry, categories do not get created. While obviously we all talk about Uber day in, day out, that wouldn't be possible without a GPS chip, a very low-cost GPS chip that gets integrated on a mobile phone. Uber would not have taken birth. And likewise, unless you have all the, switching networks as well as data connectivity, we would not even have the WhatsApps or the Zooms of the world. I mean, these are applications. They get all the limelight, but what powers these applications or industry categories is really semiconductors. Now, if you really look at, yesterday Apple turned into a $2 trillion market cap company. I hope some of the semiconductor companies, kind of get there because they're the building blocks, they're the foundation for these companies, right? While India has some few large companies comparable to global, you have like an Airtel, like an AT&T or a Uber, Ola, Amazon and Zio platforms. There isn't a large semiconductor company, right, from India yet. That is something that we need to all kind of think about. Why has that not happened? What is stopping us from creating one? If you really look at, in the IT services space, we've had the trendsetters, whether it's Infosys or TCS or HCL or Wipro. They showed to many other entrepreneurs, what it takes to build fairly large companies that would compete with Accentures and IBMs and others. And likewise, the most recent example, Flipkart, created a kind of e-commerce category in the country. And if Flipkart as a startup, thanks to the investors like Axel and Tiger, if they didn't meet each other and if they didn't work together, that industry creation would have taken much longer. So very clearly, I think it's going to be the responsibility of, apart from government policy and the corporates' participation, I think it's going to be more of entrepreneurs and investors who have to kind of come together to be able to create, these successful companies. My firm belief is I think the talent exists in India. Market is evolving thanks to geopolitical issues as well as COVID pandemic. I think the market is evolving very fast, the local opportunity. I think some amount of changes in the policy and higher capital allocation a must, in the days to come for particular this sector to flourish. I'll pause here and, obviously chime in with more thoughts as we continue.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Now, Tarun, would you like to share your thoughts on, let's have your remarks on the topic.
I think Sateesh did a perfect segue. I'm going to plagiarize a comment that I heard from Martin Fink of RISC-V 2 years ago. Actually, silicon is the oxygen that allows software to breathe. Silicon is the oxygen that allows software to breathe. Think about it, guys. And I think Sateesh mentioned that anything you do requires a piece of silicon. And silicon still brings upon very new differentiated technologies, 5G, et cetera, so on and so forth. Collaboration is key. I'm going to see if I'm able to share my screen. I am having some challenges doing that. Okay, so let me just talk about it. I'll share my screen later on. So if you look at it, let me give you a visual analogy. To support entrepreneurs, it's like a stool. A stool has 4 legs on it. There are 4 legs that we need. One is the investor leg that we very well understand. Second, in the case of the chip business, which is a complicated business, you need the service providers to help them build it. So that's the second leg of the stool. And the third leg of the stool is advising. Semiconductors, as Sateesh and others know, and many of you know in this room, is a complicated business. There are details in technologies, there are details, there are service, there's multiple steps in it. There's technology enablement, there's go-to-business market. So there's a need for critical advisors, and that's the third leg of it. And the fourth leg is there has to be an acquiring company. Please start sharing now. Okay, I'll try to do that. I am unable, when I do the share button, it says I can't do it for some reason. It says, I'm clicking the share button. What I was saying is that, so there's a fourth leg of the stool is the strategic partners. These are the acquirers. So you need to get all 3 of them, all 4 of them together at a very early stage to get the stuff. And this is where the Silicon Catalyst model came. If I was able to show my slides, this is what our vision when we started the business in 2015. And I was trying to, when I talked in my introductory remarks, we had seen innovation, and Sateesh was there in the US at that time. The entire focus had moved to SaaS and software kind of businesses, and that's what he pivoted when he talked about in his journey. And we felt that that could be done. So we started with that model. And today, I'm happy to say I have 36 in-kind partners that start from the design partners like Synopsys, Mentor, Cadence, so to the IP providers like ARM, Sci-Fi, to the design services, to the foundries, to the test backend. And we also need a bunch of business services, AWS. We need legal services. We need people of investment banking at caliber. So all of these guys have to work together collaboratively from a very early stage, because in addition to supportive government policies, these things take the business a long way. In our own journey, we started with 9 in-kind partners, maybe half a dozen advisors. Today, I have 37 in-kind partners, 190 advisors, 300 investors, and 7 strategic partners, which include ARM and ST recently. And these guys get involved at a very early stage, and this is what drives innovation. In addition, this model has been applied, our model, now that we've made it work, we see this working in Israel, we see this working in China, we see it working in EU. I have received 350 applications. I have until just recently have got one application out of India that meets these criteria. So there is this element of collaboration that is very critical. And I think that is supported by government policies that Anil, you have talked about. So I think that's where I would concur with Sateesh's remarks.
I think, Anil, you're on mute.
You just ended saying that, there is just one entity out of so many applicants and all. Do you really think we have what it takes to be part of the global value supply chain in this semiconductors and electronic supply chain?
Not today. I'm sorry, you're not like that, but not today. I think there's a long ways to go. Yesterday, I heard some of the comments from Vinod, Professor Paul Raj, and the others, Dr. Reddy, and I think a lot of what they said is true. There is an aspirational aspect of it. So yeah, today I think there's a long ways to go, but I think I agree there is the potential. That India has always had the potential. I think it has. We need to find a way to make it happen.
Yeah. So so we've had Vinod Dham coming out from India and then designing, one of the best chips, one of the pioneer chips in this thing. But he designs it outside of India. Now, what is it that we need to do to, have this component ecosystem here? Sateesh, would you like to say something on these lines?
While I broadly agree with Tarun, I think being on the ground now and spending time last several years, I believe that there are many companies in the making. If you really look at, I'll take an analogy which is kind of away, from technology into a sporting industry. You look at, right opposite my house is Pulala Gopichand Badminton Academy. When Saina Nehwal became a champion, obviously there's Kidambi Srikanth and Sindhu, practicing along with Saina. And Srikanth, obviously started doing really well. And Sindhu watched and said, oh, one of the partners of my academy could do well, means I can also do well. And then she went a step further, becoming a world champion, right? So a lot of entrepreneurs, they learn from others and then they can do things in a better way, than their predecessors, right? So that's the beauty of this entire entrepreneurial journey. And I believe that's happening even in the semiconductor industry. I think like what Tarun said, yes, you need this entire ecosystem. Take another analogy, in e-commerce. 10 years ago, if we were all sitting there and talking about e-commerce, we would complain about the same thing, which is we didn't have bandwidth, there's no credit card penetration, logistics has not evolved, the tax system and the interstate, tax tariffs, preclude you from doing e-commerce. But once, a pioneer kind of came in and then started disrupting all other, the logistics ecosystem fell in place. GST kind of simplified, the way you do business, and the payment systems kind of came into play as an alternate to, people not having credit cards but still could be, doing digital transactions. So I feel that if you look at, okay, can you build a fab? Can you have, obviously the verification services, testing services, and packaging services for the entire ecosystem to be replicated? It costs tens of billions of dollars in several years.
Yeah.
And I agree, if Tarun's vantage point is that, yes, we are further away from getting there. But if it's a question of really fabulous, semiconductor companies that have intellectual property that can solve the local market needs, but also go fight Israel and Silicon Valley companies, I believe that is happening, and I believe will happen more and more. I think it's just a question of creating. Yeah, go ahead.
I was trying to answer to Anil's question. The reason I'm here, the reason I've been trying to do this personally is we believe, sitting here in the US and looking at the potential of India, we see there should be the case. My personal experience when I first started my journey to explore silicon catalyst, I did a road trip with Sci5 last year in 2019. And I had the benefit of presenting in 5 or 6 locations, and I must have met 400 to 500 people in each locations. I saw no paucity of ideas, but there was no playbook. It was like they didn't have a path forward, right? How do you do this? Yes, there's raw talent, there's raw vision, but it takes a lot more to put that together. What I was saying, no, was to answer to Anil's question. There's nothing there today in terms of providing that ecostructure. Obviously, you're on the ground, but what it takes in terms of building a product definition, even the talent of there's a lot of technical talent. When I've been talking to entrepreneurs for India, I think a go-to-market or the business visibility, because product definition is something that is not so much prevalent in India today. I may be mistaken, but that's my perspective, and I'm willing to be corrected. Absolutely, that's why I'm here.
So, Tarun, to a broad extent, I think your observations are right, but that's changing. The product management and product marketing talent is coming back to India. That's so essential. You need to marry that with the design talent because they're the ones who know the customer requirements. They also know the competition, right?
Exactly.
And that's why I said the bar is very high when you're building these companies because you're competing, you're on a world stage and you're competing with Valley, Israel, Cambridge, China, Singapore. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, so absolutely. I think that talent is scarce, but that talent is definitely, improving. I'm also a firm believer that sometimes you don't need playbooks, right? The reason is that if Elon had a playbook. I mean, we were lucky while I was at DFJ. DFJ was one of the first investors in Tesla. If Elon followed the playbook of Ford and General Motors, he wouldn't be where he is today, right?
Absolutely.
He had to go build something from scratch, completely disruptive, completely different. Yes, you need to learn from obviously people who have done it, from the way it's done, but then you need to evolve your own ways of doing it, is what I feel. So from a playbook perspective, I feel that great entrepreneurs will evolve their own playbooks.
I agree, but I also want to make, and again, Anil, sorry, I'll let you get back. I think there's a bit of a risk aversion inherent to be a startup, to go to an entrepreneur. You've done this, Sateesh. You go to 100 VCs and you get rejected 98% of the times. That's a hard pill for many people to swallow. And I think people are, and this was talked about yesterday, that people have the option of doing a very comfortable job and have a lovely lifestyle. So that risk-taking propensity, given the fact that this is not an easy path, as you well know. So there's some element of that, in my opinion, at least in the limited interactions I've had.
Again, Tarun, sorry, that has changed significantly. I think I don't disagree. In 2000s, entrepreneurship was seen as a career risk, a social risk, and as well as a reputation risk. That is not the case anymore, right? I think.
So I agree with Sateesh. A lot has changed, and now if you look at premier engineering colleges in India, they are not looking for jobs in the best of the global companies. They would rather do their own companies. Then and there is more and more entrepreneurial acceptance by parents and families. Okay, sure. My son is doing a startup, and that risk taking. I can see this happen over the last 4 years journey. So what Sateesh is saying, I would agree with that observation. Now, what this means is another observation that is there is a lot of chip designing for multinational companies is happening in India, but then it is owned by others. Facilities are owned by entities incorporated outside, multinationals who have huge money, who can invest that much of money, who can spend. This is a sector which takes a long gestation period. It requires huge investments to actually come up with something which is, timely and which can compete with the local competitors. So I think what we need probably is Indian companies who have that financial muscle and that conviction to be able to be spending in this area. Now, why is it that, and while there are issues about mobilizing domestic capital for venture funding into India, there is huge venture market that is come up. But why is it that we don't see a lot of Indian companies investing at scale in such R&D efforts? This is what I wish to ask Satish.
I think that we all know. While we don't belittle, I think the IT services or BPO services or even semiconductor services companies, I mean, they've done India proud and they've really created solutions for the world out there and earned the very important foreign exchange, created employment. I think the product play is a fairly risky play, right? It's kind of a binary bet. Either you die a glorious death or you win. And to be able to do that, I think 50-year history of venture capital, uh, trillions of dollars invested, 100,000 odd startups. I think all talk about only 10% of these companies becoming successful. Not that the other entrepreneurs were bad or their ideas were bad. I think it's a combination of the team, the idea, the execution, the timing.
Yep.
Obviously, many other, and a slice of luck. I think many other factors kind of come into play. I think so far, the reason why they haven't done it is because they have not seen others, creating success. I think once you have a couple of case studies, you will start seeing significant amount of interest, right? I mean, similarly, if you really look at how IT services companies evolved, early on, they were more doing custom work, and then they said, I've got certain building blocks and I will accelerate your time to market. Then when companies like Mindtree or Persistent Systems, who kind of really focused on product development. It was called OPD, offshore product development. Many companies like others, even the leaders, started entering into OPD space. Likewise, I feel that within the semiconductor and electronics industries, when you see certain success stories, many others will kind of come in. But today, I think the reason why venture capitalists, we find this as an issue. And Tarun, I was not trivializing what you were saying. I think today the reality is still you have to find these needles in haystack. But thing is that we're all optimists. Situation is improving because talent is there, right? And that global connectivity is there. That hunger in the entrepreneur is there. So I'm very sure that you will see many success stories. The reason why many funds are not investing in these sets of companies, they do not have mandate, right? Majority of the capital that they raise is for India and startups solving India problems, right? I mean, they're solving India's internet issues, e-commerce issues, mobility issues, logistics issues, healthcare, education, whatever, democratizing everything. But now I think if funds like either Endiya or Tarun's program and IESA kind of come together and create tomorrow a couple of success stories, many people will start funding these companies. It's not rocket science. It will not take them too long to move into this particular arena. And other limitation for many people, like what Tarun mentioned, is lack of domain knowledge and having that global Rolodex. And this is where building that bridge, Mr. Agrawal, either with Israel, with Silicon Valley, who are pioneers, is going to become very important. I think tapping into that knowledge that already exists, building that symbiosis is going to become very critical. And like I said, we need more case studies, which I believe will happen. And so you will see a lot of capital moving into this sector.
Okay, so essentially what you're talking of is something like an induction effect. So if you have, one success story, it inspires more. Like if my neighbor can do it, why can't I do it? So this is something that he's suggesting. Tarun, what's your take on this?
No. So I got to. I'm not trying to impugn that. So I'll give you certain data. In 5 years, I've received 350 applications. I have yet to receive until last month. I have not received a single application from India. I get IP services, I get design services, I not get product. I get applications from South Africa, I get applications from all over the world. That's why in 2019. So what prevents people from doing this? I totally hear you, Sateesh, and that there's a lot of this effort. but I am yet to see this. Talk about the four critical things. The team, the technology, the traction, and the timing. Right. I think that technology, I agree, is there. It's the timing of this. What is the product you're trying to? Are you doing a Me Too product? Is there some genuine innovation you're doing? What kind of? I mean, that goes into a deeper universe, and that's a whole rat hole I don't want to go into. But where is the IP being generated? Do you have a differentiated product that addresses a large market? And some of the entrepreneurs I've spoken to, they have a Me Too idea, with there's nothing wrong with that. But then how do you differentiate yourself in a globally competitive market? And I see some of these perspectives, and people in India, they I think they assume that knowing two steps it's a complicated journey. Satish, you've done this yourself. I don't want to go into those details, but successful entrepreneurs do not make it the next time, and there's a lot of pivoting, there's a lot of changing, there's a dynamism, and it's a hard business, and it requires a lot of continual support. I think a big help would be that people in India, or people in this audience, go out and help a startup. Just be an advisor. It's not about money. Just give them 10 minutes of your time. Tell them not to shift left, where to make those early decisions. I think that's what we have created as an ecosystem that's really working worldwide. I have advisors all over the world who are talking to startups at the various stages, and maybe an hour of somebody's time, maybe, or just Anil, from your perspective, just telling them where are these government programs, make it easily available. I hosted two panels with the Department of Defense this morning, and I'll be hosting two tomorrow. The Department of Defense is sitting with the Silicon Valley ecosystem and is trying to tell them that we have this vision of 5G and we're connecting the dots. So collaboration is key. And I think that's really what we need to figure, a method of collaborating more effectively. There is no dearth of money. There is no dearth of talent. There is no dearth of markets. It's a matter of somebody connecting the dots, and the entrepreneurs can't do them by themselves. They have the vision. They have the passion. We need to create an ecosystem. And that's where I think when I call the Silicon Catalyst, it's not a playbook like there's a formula. It's like, you have to think local, act global. You have to go in a competitive marketplace. So that's kind of my perspective of it. But
so
again, I'm no expert on India.
I think this is a time check. How much time do we have?
Yeah, we should check.
Do we have some questions from the audience?
Mr. Anil, we can maybe try to wrap it up. There is some thoughts and questions coming up, and then maybe I'll leave it to you to decide whether to summarize and close with it. So you talked about matchmaking process. There is already a lot of data where you say we have reached to the number 3 in the startup amount of numbers and dollars that are throwing in. So with the focus that Sateesh is pushing or Tarun is putting on the semiconductor in general funding and taking it to the semiconductor manufacturing funding, how do we see that numbers going from number 3 to number 2, number 1? How many years? That's the thoughts that's coming in.
Okay, so you see, we have done extensive consultations. Like this is one of the efforts. Like we are now talking. Similarly, and it is not just that this the government of India. There's only one department doing it. We are encouraging all the state governments to do it. And you see now where this is a risk. You can't say today you are third. When will you become second? Because others also are making efforts equally well, if not better than you. So you can never say that you can never set a time limit that in 2 years time I'm going to be number 2 ecosystem or the top ecosystem. That's probably not the right approach. What we should be looking at is what are our aspirations, and are we supporting in terms of government policy anything? Are there any gaps in the government policy that are required to be filled in? Number one. And what is it that investors, the industry, and the corporates, they need to do to give fillip to original innovation and then making successful businesses out of those innovations? So, some ideas have come up. Tarun has given some ideas. Sateesh has given some ideas. Let's articulate these ideas in a more actionable kind of format, and actionable for industry, for those who are in the industry, semiconductor industry, electronics industries. We are going to be depending more and more on electronics. To be probably, as an individual, as a society, we depend more on electronics today than ever before, right? And this dependence on electronics is increasing, by the way. Everything that was done mechanically, whole lot of things have now converted to electronics and semiconductors. So we need to figure out together some more actionables on how we could do that. I think the National Electronics Policy of Government of India is a major step in the right direction. The second is, as I said, the production linked incentive scheme. We have seen interest of global majors for setting up manufacturing facilities here, and there could be critics who say that the value addition is very less. It's going to be 15%, 20% value addition, but then that is just the beginning. And once you have that in place, then of course our innovative spirit will add a number of layers to that, and probably we'll get higher up the value chain. This is what I would like to say. And Tarun, any parting thoughts from you?
No. First of all, thank you for the ISR leadership for giving this opportunity. I was not able to share my slides. Silicon Catalyst we are committed to incubate startups worldwide. I would love to see more participation from India. Please reach out to us on our website for details. Please reach out to me. I am fully convinced that India has the potential and the talent. And when I was articulating my statement, I felt that it needed help. And I was saying that we all need to collaborate together to make it happen. So wish you all the best, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. Sateesh, any parting thoughts?
No, I think thanks for the opportunity. Like I said in the very beginning, this is a great show put together by ISA, very much needed, given the current pandemic. Just to add, I think China accounted for 50% of the semiconductor demand last year. To corroborate what you said, Anil, the country's growth depends on the consumption of the semiconductors and electronics, and India is going to need so much more. And I think the local markets, the intelligent edge, the medical devices, the unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, all these applications are going to take off. And so you're going to see many entrepreneurs. I think some will fail. It's a sprint as well as a marathon. Running a company is a sprint as well as a marathon. You run very fast every day, but you're running a marathon. But that entrepreneurial energy we cannot underestimate. I think we need all the people in here. I think we need the corporate executives, who know how to do it. We need IESA. We need Taruns. We need, of course, a Startup India and the venture capitalists to create the success and create a platform for entrepreneurs to realize their dreams. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Isa, for this excellent opportunity. Thanks very much.
Bye now.
Thank you. Thank you very much to each one of you. Actually, while we were closing this, I was seeing the Q&A, and I think Tarun put that together. A lot of audience started asking, saying, how do I get more details? How do I contact? So I think for now, I'll announce saying all details are there, whether it's on the Government of India website or your individual company's website. And then hopefully you get to see more proposals and ideas coming from this.
Thank you very much.
As we break for the session, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all three of you, starting with Mr. Anil Agrawal. Thank you for your time and moderating this panel. Tarun, thank you for taking time out and helping us with your thoughts and actually challenging some of the things with a lot of data. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
And Sateesh, thanks to you, being our, I would say, the vocal cord to the world saying like, no, we are getting there. Thank you so much. Okay, with that, we finished the morning session. I know we are late by 20 minutes, but this was such an engaging talk. We didn't want to stop there. We'll get back after the break at 1:55 p.m. In the meantime, we encourage you to go and visit the EPS and the exhibit booths and be back at 1:55 p.m. Thank you.